All right, let's pile it on. Let's get out of here. That's a lot of fish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mecha and Monster Mondays. Today, we'll be covering the film Cloverfield, directed by Matt Reeves. And today, I have a very special guest to talk about this film with me.
Hello, my name is Luci. You can call me Lucille or Lucer, but don't call me anything other than that. You don't call me Joe because that's not my name.
Fair.
I like movies a lot. I also have a podcast where I talk about movies, Horrors for Horror, and I also stream on Twitch under the username Midwestrogen, like a pun on Midwest and estrogen, sort of a combination of the two. I
When
like
you go,
kaijus too.
yeah,
Mecha.
you are a enjoyer of both, and today we are covering Cloverfield. And before we get into the real nitty-gritty of like why you chose the film and what the
Mhm.
film is really kind of about, I want to cover just like a little bit of the history of this film itself because it is fairly interesting to say the least.
Yeah, no, I did a bit of looking because I knew a little bit, but I did a bit of looking and was just like, holy fuck, there's so much more here than I expected.
Yeah, that was ostensibly how like part of me had to re-remember it because I had a friend who ostensibly broke down the production history of this to me like forever ago, and I kind of forgot about it. And then
Mm.
when I did my research on this, I was like, oh yeah. But to give you a rundown, so J.J. Abrams originally wanted to create America's version of Godzilla, more so in its like original intent, not so much just like a like big cool kaiju monster thing. And so this movie was secretly greenlit by Paramount at the time and was filmed in New York with a variety of camcorders, to say the least. It was as some people might know, this film is a found footage film kind of style. So they used a lot of kind of like camcorder style for it. Uh and an interesting fact about one of the actors who is world's biggest single cell organism, TJ Miller, filmed almost a third of the film, supposedly. So make of that information what you will. But on the flip side of that, Spielberg suggested hinting that the monster would have a more clear fate by the end of the story, as he saw a version of the film pretty early on, as him and J.J. Abrams are sort of like close working partners in some ways. And the monster itself was designed by Nick Tom and the one and only Phil Tippett, who you might
Woo!
know for like his work with Jurassic Park and also for his film Mad God. And
Woohoo!
the I was gonna say my mind also does like yippee every time I see Phil Tippett's name on anything.
Yeah.
And the VFX themselves were done by Neville Page. Well, actually, wait, no, Neville Page was the person who creates the actual conceptual design of the monster. And something that is fairly notable about this film, which we might kind of go into more depth as we talk about this film, is that a utilized a really interesting viral marketing campaign that mostly maintained secrecy, along with using a lot of puzzle sites to promote the film. To say the least, it's unorthodox even by like today's standards. That's how I'd put it.
Yeah,
But
like if I'm remembering correctly, even like the original teaser and like a lot of the stuff didn't even say what the name of the movie was going to
nah,
be.
it was just you saw a scene from a movie, which I believe was the Statue of Liberty head like flying through the street, and
Huh.
then cut away, and it was like, oh well, what was that called then? And the reason for that was they were still in the process of picking a title for the movie.
No fucking way. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's totally something that I would do.
it's they like yes. In another way, it also maintained its secrecy and kind of created mystique around it. But it was also because they were like, we still only just settled on Cloverfield as our title. We gotta have a better name than this, right? And then at some point, everyone's like, nah, fuck it. Let's just keep it Cloverfield.
Yeah.
There is no significance to it other than that.
Genuinely, yeah, that's one of the biggest things for me. Just like what is Cloverfield?
Yeah, yeah, like that's the thing. That's the thing. I kind of like it kind of works for me like looking back at it because I almost see it as like a name for like some sort of like sort of classified like like government project that's like supposed to like analyze what this alien is and be like, oh yeah, it's Project Cloverfield or something like that. But like, yeah, like by itself, it literally has like no bearing on the actual like story of the film. So it's just like it it could have been called like F- Frank's Fart Academy, and it would have made as much sense. So like it is an interesting name. I was gonna say this. At least it's like a name that is somewhat evocative, but it is still just like why why that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the production history of the film itself. Now we can really get into the film itself, but also maybe talk about some of the like build up to the film around its original release because that in of itself is fairly interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of like something I guess like is interesting to me within like the first few minutes is like this as like a found footage film before like the age of like massive vlog style kind of like videos were ever created because like to me I found it interesting how much this tries to stay with like one group of characters and just stick to that completely because
Yeah.
it feels like something that could even go like bigger than that if they wanted to like show the full like sense of scale of something like the Cloverfield monster. But no, it just kind of sticks to like one group of people and doesn't really like change anything from that. And as I was kind of saying, it's like it makes me think of almost like an early example of vlogs if halfway through the vlog you accidentally were like, hey, we got a kaiju attacking our city.
Yeah. I will like that's honestly something that I've been wanting to do is something sort of in the vein of like because like I am a big defender of found footage horror. I definitely listen, there's a lot of shitty found footage out there. I have
Hmm.
seen my fair share of lots of shitty found footage. One of my favorite found footage franchises, Paranormal Activity, has I think one of the worst found footage movies ever made
Hmm.
within it. But I think found footage as a genre idea has so much potential because especially with it being kind of I don't want to say like being popularized in like the boom of like reality TV, but like when we had like all the
Hmm.
paranormal activities and stuff coming out, even when Cloverfield comes out, like reality TV is like huge. Like we have like
Hmm.
Survivor on, like if you're basically watching people live their lives and stuff like that. And now in the sense of we have Twitch now where people are
Hmm.
watching other people live and just doing kind of just random stuff. And you have some people who are taking that idea and running with it, either with movies such as Searching or Spree.
Hmm.
You even have like certain streamers who are doing stuff like that, like in some aspects, Wayne Radio TV and his friends basically making uh almost found footage type streams, or they're just like normal
Hmm.
streams but something just goes wrong. And
Yeah.
that's honestly something that I really like because in this day and age of like you're already watching a bunch of people, like wouldn't it be really cool to be watching that you think is completely normal and then all of a sudden just some fucking random shit happens, which is something that I really like and I want to do for myself, but there are also several people out there who have done it really good so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like the thing is that like by this point, I think a lot of people have an idea of what found footage kind of storytelling is like, because like this was a couple years after like the Blair Witch, and I think around the same time that Paranormal Activity came out. So like it's kind of like a visual language that people have come to understand. And I guess like
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I find interesting about like found footage films is that it's like it's something where like having less is actually more in terms of like the kinds of stories you want to tell. Because for instance, like Blair Witch Project was made on like the budget that like what the characters in the movie actually probably would have for their film. And
Yeah.
with like Cloverfield, like this is ostensibly like $100 million movie made on 30. So like there's a lot of like having to know the limitations within which using this specific medium can be still like communicate kind of like a realistic like atmosphere, because like that's kind of the big
Yeah.
thing at the end of the day is like communicating like realism to an extent where like you believe it's like, oh, someone reacting naturally to like an event like this actually happening, sort of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like even all the way back to like the pioneers of like found footage, to even to like with like Cannibal Holocaust
Yeah.
or like Blair Witch Project, even nowadays to like some newer found footage stuff, you still, even if you don't have the naturalism like feeling, you can still make a good movie as a found footage movie. I
Yeah.
think one thing that I think often fails within found footage movies to me is people like trying to people just getting either making it just because oh it's a found footage movie, it's easy, we'll just like put the camera here and then oh something scary happens about that, or people try and get like in way over their head and just try to do too much and just kind of falters. Both things that
Mhm.
Paranormal Activity franchise has done with its last two movies, unfortunately, which makes me very
Oh.
sad. But yeah, the true like Paranormal to the Ghost Dimension was one of those where like, oh, let's put the camera here, and then I'm convinced that Next of Kin wasn't meant to be a Paranormal Activity movie ahead of time. It also wasn't meant to be found footage because it is truly hard to tell what is or isn't diegetic footage or sound effects in that movie too.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing to me personally. But this is not a Paranormal Activity podcast. This is a Cloverfield podcast, and I think Cloverfield succeeds in all these aspects really well personally.
Mm. Yeah, that's very fair. I think there's a lot of aspects in terms of like Cloverfield stylization that like works to its benefit in terms of like I think I think the thing I really appreciate a lot about it is its staging of like actors, because a lot of the time like it's really hard to naturally kind of stage actors in a way that's like believable in terms of like a scary sequence sometimes, because of the fact you're just like, walk over there, just run wherever. But like when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing something that is like a large scale kaiju film, you kind of have to like be conscious of like the staging of like actors, because you have like hundreds of extras like on a film to again to kind of convince you that it's like, yeah, this is like the middle of New York, and like an entire disaster is like happening all around everyone. So I feel like that's one element that I really do appreciate, is like the way that those uh sequences are staged, especially like the bit with the Statue of Liberty head coming
Mm-hmm.
down, and then like everyone around it like is slowly beginning to start like take pictures of it with like their phones and cameras. It's like it's
Yeah.
it's like it doesn't feel like it's trying to comment on anything like that, but it just feels like it's like a natural moment like that would have happened. uh with that being
Yeah.
said though, the individual characters of Cloverfield are kind of a blur to me in a lot of ways.
That is fair. Here's the thing for me is I cannot remember a single one of their names, but I still remember things about them and emotional things through them that makes me like really feel like honestly like get pretty emotional.
Mhm.
What are their fucking names? I don't know, bro. I don't fucking know.
There was uh
Hudge.
yeah, Hutch was probably one of them. Like,
There's
yeah.
oh fucking oh god, I wrote down her name. Let me pull up my notes. Marlena. There's Marlena.
Marlena.
Yeah, she was the black-haired girl
Yeah.
who TJ Miller uh kept trying to get with and failed miserably and very funnily.
Can I give you a look into some of the notes that I wrote while taking this talking about this
Yes.
movie? So I wrote down a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff like discussing like aspects of the film, and every once in a while I just wrote in all caps, "TJ Miller die. I hate TJ Miller. Please stop talking. Why does he
I
why does he
yeah.
keep saying, 'Are you seeing this, guys?'"
Yeah. What I wrote a few notes. But I think what I couple of my favorite notes that I wrote was at the beginning. But TJ Miller at the party just randomly going around being like, I'm documenting. Like, I hate his character so much that generally did get a laugh out of him. He's just like, I'm documenting.
Yeah.
And then my favorite note that I did was I wrote Miller down with the emoji with like the noisemaker emoji. I put
Oh.
that down like 10 times. Then I put down the open confetti emoji 3 times, then the confetti popper emoji 3 times, then the open confetti emoji 1 time, then the champagne bottle, then the confetti popper, champagne bottle, confetti popper, champagne bottle, confetti popper, confetti down, confetti popper, champagne bottle. That just goes on like constantly in loop, just a barrage of 3 different celebration emojis, 4 different celebration emojis when TJ Miller died.
I'm sad you didn't put a yippee after that.
If I had the autism creature as the emoji, I would have put that 500 times.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's yeah, I was gonna say it's like when I first watched Cloverfield, I was kind of like, yeah, this dude's gonna like die in the most horrific way possible at some point in this movie. And when he did, I was like, called it.
Yeah.
Uh but yeah, I think individual characters like I think there's like enough to connect with them in a way that's interesting. But I
Mm-hmm.
guess something and I have to admit this is probably me having like a moment of like if I made this movie and honestly I should like fucking like shut that part of my brain off anytime
Yeah.
I'm watching a movie. But regardless, I have always been curious about like what if there was like a version of this film where you saw it from like 4 or 5 different perspectives of like people filming stuff. Cause like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I just think it's like really funny that like in the opening sequence you have like a this is a government duplicate of like classified information, and it's just like, hey, we found camera of some fucking schmuck. Let's
Yeah.
put it in our government archives.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see a found footage movie where it's multiple people filming, you should watch As Above, So Below.
I should actually. I've been
It's fu-
interested in that one,
it's fucking great. It's fucking great. I love that movie.
but
But yeah, one thing that I'm really curious about just ahead before we talk a bit more about the movie,
mhm,
you and I were both Cloverfield haters for a while.
mhm.
I definitely came around myself. I saw this movie several times, and every single time I watched it, I did not connect with it. I hated it. And I just did not care for it. Then I got COVID, and then I watched it, and me like sitting down and like watching it was just like it really like clicked. Everything like clicked, and then watching it again this time was me being like, yeah, no, this movie I really did not give the credit that I think this movie deserves. It is incredible. How are you still a Cloverfield hater, or have you grown on it?
I am a Cloverfield neutral.
That's very fair.
I would put it in this way. There is a lot of incredibly impressive stuff here, and a lot of sequences that I think are pretty emotionally impactful, because I think there's like, for like a PG-13 film, this film is bleak as fuck at a lot of points, and it's
Yeah.
genuinely very impressive the ways in which like it communicates, like, ostensibly like mass hysteria in the face of like a massive catastrophe, which is kind of a like very concurrent theme with much of all kaiju cinema in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I do really appreciate a lot of the ways in which like the realism was kind of conveyed through like the found footage style. But there's like a lot of instances, and I guess this is just like me with found footage stuff occasionally. It's like there's some elements of it where like I'm kind of like the illusion breaks a little bit for me, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it I will admit is like small technical stuff that's probably not really that important, but like I just think about like, man, why is this raw recorded footage so color graded? or
Yeah.
like or like there's bits during the film where like when the camera is like shaking quite a bit, where it like glitches out a little bit, and like I don't know, I've always kind of thought that like when doing found footage, like it works even better to just like strip it back as much as possible, because like even when you have like a camera that is still kind of grainy, like the one that they use in this one, it's still kind of a bit too nice looking for me to fully like immerse myself in it. But with that being said, this is also trying to do like a big VFX kaiju film at the same time, so maybe it was kind of necessary to do so.
Yeah.
So like I am mostly indifferent, and I'd say it is a very impressive movie, but like my overall like feelings on it are just like, that was neat. I wish it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't TJ Miller that was there. And I know I'm going to keep
Yeah.
bringing that up, but like literally, like even in 2008, who actually likes TJ Miller?
Yeah.
Like like look, okay, like real talk. Anyone listening to this who was like over the age of 16 in 2008, did you actually like TJ Miller? Yes or no? Do the Q&A below.
I liked TJ Miller when Deadpool came out, but I was also 14 and it was 2016.
Yeah, fair point. I was gonna say that actually is. There's probably like some Deadpool enjoyers, but then again, it's like who watched Cloverfield not knowing who T.J. Miller is and came out of it being like, that guy's cool, I like him.
Yeah. Cause he really is, I think, the worst part of the movie, but he does get laughs out of me by how much he sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say like, at least if nothing else, Matt Reeves is kind of aware that T.J. Miller sucks, so he just makes him the most pathetic character like in existence.
yeah.
So like,
Also, me
there's that.
realizing this was Matt Reeves, like on upon revisiting was just like kind of be like, oh, if the way this is framed and the way of how bleak it is, just seeing this and the Batman is like, oh no, yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, no, like it's honestly very interesting with like that knowledge in mind, because like they seem like very different films in a lot of ways, but like there is kind of a pretty clear connection in there. I think also in the fact that like Matt Reeves has a very good eye for like strong visual effects, because he also did the two of the Planet of the Apes films that are very, very good.
Oh,
And
okay.
like,
I haven't seen any of those yet.
the Batman films are also like really good. So like he's someone who has like a very good eye for like visual effects, but also kind of like a sort of more grim kind of like low light aesthetic, because like, it's New York at nighttime for most of this film, and Batman is a movie that is like perpetually nighttime almost.
Mm-hmm.
So like his aesthetic choices and like visual effects knowledge seem to kind of be pretty prominent even from like not his debut film, I don't believe, but like one of his first few movies.
Yeah. One thing that I think is also like pretty important when talking about Cloverfield, that like nowadays it's not like the biggest thing on the forefront of our minds, but back in 2006, 2007 when this come out. This is very much post 9/11 paranoia.
Yeah, it is like very, very obvious just from like the first 20 minutes. Like this is kind of like some sort of analogy or kind of like commentary on that in some way.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure. Like I wrote this down when the first explosion happens. Like one that you can audibly hear someone say, "Is there another terrorist attack?"
Yeah, it's
And
like it's kind of funny because like a couple years back from this, there was War of the Worlds by Steven Spielberg, where there's also another like monster alien attack, and someone being like, "Is it terrorists?" And it's like, man, you wish it was. This shit's worse.
yeah, it really is just like I think just with the way it's made, it's kind of important, especially with the camcorders in mind, like the found footage. It definitely is just post 9/11 paranoia turned into a creature feature.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, I was gonna say like it definitely kind of is sort of that in a lot of ways, and what I kind of like about it is that it's not like completely like on the nose about it or something like that, where it's like the alien is really the monster is really humanity or something along those
Oh
lines.
God,
It's kind
no.
of it's just a creature that we don't know how it got here that is running loose
Yeah.
on New York and causing destruction, and maybe there really is no like meaning behind the monster's attacks. Maybe there is. It's like no one actually is able to like understand it, so that just makes everyone more paranoid about it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I can't know I don't know if this is real or not from like looking up, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing somewhere that Clover the monster is a baby one of its species.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, and I was like, I don't know if that was something that was like communicated in Cloverfield Paradox, because I watched that forever ago. I literally don't remember anything about it, but
Me neither.
apparently it touches on the Cloverfield monster. But yeah, I remember hearing that it's like a child. It's basically a child going through like separation anxiety, and by doing so,
Yeah.
just like destroying New York.
He just doesn't know where he is. Like he's just a little baby.
He's just a
He hasn't
little babe.
he doesn't know that he's destroying civilizations. He's just trying to be like, where the fuck is my mom, bro?
Go, my child, destroy the New York stock market.
USA, USA.
USA.
um, I wrote down quite a few notes during this. One of them that I wrote that I really like is it's either the few notes I wrote that I just want to just kind of elaborate on. One of them just being just the soundtrack at the beginning of the party being so fucking 2000s.
Oh my god. Oh, dude. Oh,
Yeah, you
it's
got fucking
so
19
2000s.
2000 by Gorillaz. You have The Underdog by Spoon. You have Sean Kingston, Beautiful Girls playing in the background.
Like I was watching this and I was like, oh god, I can feel my body becoming younger and I hate it.
Yeah. It's just like, oh my God, there's so much here. And then one of my favorite notes is, and I'm going to see if you understand what I mean by this in both reference to what I'm saying and reference to the movie. The news or the Bob for today.
Why do I know that? I hate that I know that.
Yeah, I made that because there's like it's when they're in the TV shop and it's just all the pictures of the news, and then there's that one TV on the right that's playing SpongeBob. And
Just,
all the
I was so distracted during that I wasn't paying attention to what was being said.
yeah, just like there's just SpongeBob there.
Yeah. I think literally one of my notes is just SpongeBob in all caps.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
What's he doing there? And then another note that I wrote is just I fucking hate this subway.
Oh god, I really want to talk about the subway sequence actually.
I do too. That scene I I'm gonna say I hate that scene, but not in the sense of the fact that it is a bad scene. I just hate that scene because it is that scene.
Very fair, very fair. To me, like it's something that like is almost gonna be like super scary. Like the night vision segment where like they
Yeah.
see the monsters in the back is like that's freaky as fuck. But there's one thing that kind of broke it for me though, and it's the fact that the monsters make fucking Donald Duck sound effects. It's like I was watching it and I was just like, oh man, those are like some freaky alien designs, and then the aliens go and I'd be like, oh,
Fucking
never
fun.
mind. Never mind. I think
Yeah.
it's not really that scary anymore.
God. It's just scary because they feel it's because I do not like spiders and they feel very and like not to say that like there are some ways of like designing spiders where I am fine with like for some reason like the spiders shown in like Spider-Man and stuff like that don't give me. But when they're like big
Mhm.
fucking spiders like or like crab spiders stuff like this like in I was thinking like this or even like Apollo 18, where there's just like it's like this design it fucking sucks for me. I can't look at like every single time like they like when they're like hold on like and they turn the camera and they're trying to figure out how to turn the night vision. I'm like closing my eyes like I like nope I don't want to see that shit. I can't look at it.
A note for all viewers of this podcast who have arachnophobia: never, ever, ever look up the words camel spider in your life. Just don't do it. You'll thank me.
I don't want to know. I generally don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
It's fucking scary.
It's I would take the Cloverfield spider monsters over it. But the thing that really do like about that sequence is as another case where like the found footage element actually is kind of like implemented in a pretty clever way, which again like the night vision footage thing, the reveal of that is like genuinely like, oh fuck no. And it's super good. I really like that one a lot.
Yeah, I don't want to like be like I'm gonna compare it to another movie, but I think like when terms of like night vision monster reveals, I think this one is by far my favorite. I know a lot of people love the one in The Descent, but I believe that this one personally just it takes the cake because it's not night vision the entire time. It's like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
just
oh
like
normal and then just fucking hell.
yeah. But one thing I also kind of want to bring up also is like once they get out of the subway, they go to this like kind of like small kind of military hospital basically, and there's like
Oh.
the shit is like really just like unsettling and just like uncomfortable. But the thing is like this okay, like this is like what I mean by like little moments of this film kind of break the illusion a little bit for me is that uh all these people like around here are just kind of like going through like a horrible like illness or just like injury. TJ Miller passes by a man who is literally disemboweled and his reaction is like, oh gross.
You just say I like so because I didn't even process like him saying that, but yeah, no, God,
It was just like it was so funny because it's like almost like a shit post of like see someone dying on the street and you're like, ugh,
yeah,
gross.
yucky. I will say I think that scene does lead into what was the most probably harrowing scene for me every single time I watch it beyond the spider scene is Marlena's death.
Yeah, that's a really good moment.
It's a really good moment and it fucks me up like pretty much every time. It's just like I think it's one of my I don't want to say it's one of my favorite interested of like PG-13 like gore, but like the fact that it's like you see like you kind of like follow her for a bit and then you see for a bit that like her eyes are being and then they just take her away and you just hear her screaming and then in silhouette you see her just explode. It's like oh
Yeah,
my
like
God, what the fuck is this?
like you kind like again another thing I really like about this is that there's really no explanation for anything that actually happens with like the monster stuff, so it's not like she was infected by big balloon disease or something like that. It was like no, it's just this person's dead and we don't know why. It's just like all of it is like just things that they cannot really fully comprehend at the time, and makes it even more alien in that sense. But no, that scene
Yeah.
is surprisingly effective for
Hmm.
how sudden it is. Uh,
Yeah.
but then after that, there is like the whole like uh the main guy is trying to get back to like I guess his ex-girlfriend
Hmm.
sort of again, literally the specifics of like the actual character relationships. I'm just like they know each other and they got to go find each other and that's it.
Yeah. I will say that there's a lot of things within that I do quite like I like reasonings behind character motivations, like that's something different, but more so just like the whole framing device of the movie being like be taped over like this one memory thing, and then it's just and like occasionally you get like the cut glimpses of it. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really good. Also the way it pays off in the end is also really good.
Yeah, I was
Um
gonna say it's like I like those moments because they feel like again another instance where like the fan footage element is like sort of fully utilized, and also because
yeah.
it does actually like affect me a bit emotionally and like oh wow,
Hmm.
it's like these like little bits of memories are now kind of just like vanishing in the face of like just complete destruction happening all around them.
Yeah, and no matter what, just hearing someone like crying over a phone like always does kind of get me emotionally.
Hmm.
I don't know why it does, but there's just something so like about like the idea of just like you are just hearing someone just suffer and you can't do anything about that always just kind of
Yeah,
gets me.
the disconnect going on because of like the scene before they go down in the subway, I think is like actually like really impactful where he's just like on the phone trying to like
with with his
understand
mom.
anything, yeah, like what's going on, and you just see him kind of like slump over and just complete like defeat about like literally like his entire world like crumbling around him. Like I love the
Yeah.
stuff with that character quite a bit. It
Hmm. It's very good.
It is very good. It is very good. And I think like moments like that where like the emotion does kind of shine through a bit more clear is like where I am like there is there is some really good stuff about this film, even if I am not like the biggest fan of it. Um,
Yeah.
but one thing I will say that is a massive missed opportunity is I know we're supposed to have like an emotional kind of end with like the two characters like after they escaped, but I was really hoping the Cloverfield monster would eat the camera.
Damn. Yeah.
I want like that one scene from Nope, but it's a found footage sequence.
Oh my God. That's my nightmare right there.
I was gonna say it's like that would be like the most horrifying thing you could put in a PG-13 movie is like that basically.
God, if they like genuinely, if someone does that, I will like personally be like that is like my exact nightmare. Just that scene from Nope already was like one of these scariest things I had seen, and then just putting that in found footage. Oh God, no,
Yeah.
fuck. I
Yeah.
mean, you get kind of close within. We get kind of close with that, not in Cloverfield, but in another found footage movie called The Borderlands. I mean, you get kind
Oh,
of close to that.
interesting.
Another great found footage recommendation movie that I have for you
Hmm.
today.
I'll have to
Um,
check that one out.
yeah, I think it's all free on YouTube right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite good.
Yeah.
But yeah, um, something I also just love is about this movie is, I mean, just the cre the kaiju design in general. Clover's design I really like.
Hmm.
It's very cool. It's very like in some ways it's very just like indistinguishable monster, but there's just something just so about the way it's designed and the way it moves and the way it sounds that I really like.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um
say it's like this was sort of like early 2000s, so like there like some of the creature sound design we can kind of tie it back to a lot of like monster sound design that we have now, but like it was a bit more like fresh at the time, and it still is pretty effective in like the way the fucking like reverberating kind of like weird creature sounds that it makes occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do enjoy the monster design in this. And also I think like the fact that like it is more alien than, like a lot of monster designs have been in like kaiju films. Because like, like Godzilla, big lizard,
That's my friend right there. That's my friend.
That's my family you're talking about.
And even Mothra, that's my best friend right there.
Yeah.
Like,
And yeah, like, and also Mothra is just a big moth. But like the Cloverfield monster is kind of a bit more undistinguishable because of like the fucking like massive weird eyes and sacks and the
yeah,
all fours kind of walking style it has.
it's very it's very cool. I do quite like it.
Yeah. And I feel like that kind of gets me into like a bit more in the thematic sense about like this film because uh as I've come to discover through doing this podcast, kaiju films in some way are always about military escalation, which considering that
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Abrams kind of intended this to be like America's equivalent to the original Godzilla, and the fact that it is a very, 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 very post 9/11 film, I think is kind of note.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have the Iron Giant approach of them just shooting at it instantly, just being like, guys, I don't think that's gonna work. I don't think that's gonna
Yeah,
work, guys.
yeah, like I think of the scene where like the main group of people like turn around and suddenly like the entire military is behind them.
Yeah, it's just like what the fuck? They're
Yeah.
just there and just almost run them over too. It's like
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me like with that aspect of it being like a post 9/11 film because it feels very much more purposeful in that sense because like you know at the
Mm-hmm.
time it would have been like we would have been like I think invaded both like Afghanistan and Iraq, and so like that was kind of the point when we were like now we are the ones in control. But like Cloverfield is kind of a parable of like you have no control or stability over like literally anything anymore, because like in terms of like the character relationship, that's kind of even how it is because it's like a dude is about to move to like a new job. He's not with like the person that he's come to love for like the longest time ever. You got some fucking weirdo recording everything. Like nothing is stable about this, and then just adding in a
Yeah.
kaiju destroying everything makes that even more unstable. And I think like the kaiju is kind of the Cloverfield monster is kind of an extension of like the ways in which everyday life can kind of be just easily shattered. And
Yeah.
and I think the kaiju element specifically is kind of purposeful because like again like like they mention like oh is this terrorist attacks or something, but like you know that's something that like military could like supposedly find a way to stop or keep control of, whereas like there's no way to control this shit. You're not gonna
Yeah.
like keep a kaiju fucking under wraps from like destroying an entire city because like that shit's just gonna do whatever it wants. So like
Yeah. Jurassic Park like finds a way. Like
yeah,
just
like life finds a way sort of deal.
yeah.
So like even if I'm not entirely certain what it might be saying with that specifically, it's still saying something about it, and I think it's kind of uh a bit interesting to like use kind of like what is by all accounts like a classic like in the face of massive tragedy we kind of look towards like monsters for catharsis or just some understanding of like tragedy and using
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
for that specific period of time.
Yeah, there's something just so trying to find the right word to describe it for me. This like I I love a lot of kaiju movies, and because a lot of them are like are really fun in some aspects, but I think something that I
Mhm.
really like about this one is how urgent it is. It's kind of
Yeah.
like same within like the original Godzilla be like having like a anti-nuclear anti-nuclear weapons message. There's not really more of a not really like a huge like message against this one, but there's just something just that feels so urgent about this, so of the time, and just so like now about Cloverfield for the time that I really like.
Yeah, because like I'd say like even though I was kind of indicating that like kaijus are always sort of like stories about military escalation, I don't really know if it's saying much of anything about like the military, but more so like the individual like experience, the citizens' experience of like tragedy going on during that time. Because again, like in a lot of kaiju movies, it is like from the perspective of like the military itself, whereas in this film, honestly, like the military seems like just as much a threatening alien force as the kaiju itself in a lot of ways, because again, there's like that shot where they turn around and there's like a basically like military jump scare.
Yeah. And then just like they're like I want to like they're like I need to go find my friend, and they're just like no you can't he's just like well fuck you, I want a bitch.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it's like what if I do anyway?
Yeah.
But like I don't know, I feel like even though it's not as like particularly like explicit in its message or as deep as something like a like original Godzilla or even like a Shin Godzilla, I feel like there is still a lot of merit to like that story, and also like the way they decide to film it, because this very much could have just been like a movie about a big monster from the perspective of the people, but like the found footage element does kind of add that, not just like emphasizing that this is the late 2000s and that people can buy cameras that they can use for whatever, but more so just like a more immediate like point of view of like the people rather than just like the systems of authority that like try to fight against like the big monster.
Yeah.
So for that, I'd say it's like a very interesting artistic choice, even if my thoughts overall is like it's fine. I think it's all right.
And I completely understand everything that you've been saying about it. I agree with like a few of them, but I think like mostly it's just like it doesn't bother me too much because it doesn't bother me like all that much, but I completely understand why it is a bother.
Yeah. I will say one thing though. This will be my last nitpick. I swear. I will not be like I'm not gonna be a actually though person for this. But there's one thing that like completely took me out of the movie though is there's a scene where they're on the bridge, which actually is like an amazing tense scene.
It's a really good scene.
But there's a bit where they're looking off to like the horizon and they see like an explosion happen, and somehow that camera has like the farthest zoom I've ever seen on any camera ever. And I watched that
what the fuck?
I was like, no one has a camera that goes that far.
That fucking Galaxy S23 zoom, like no fucking way. In 2008 or whatever this was like filmed, no way.
My 720p Sony Handycam can fucking zoom all the way across to Jupiter.
Yeah, one thing that I definitely am curious, because I watched this on my phone recently, but I went because I wanted to, but I bought the 4K version of this that came out. I'm so curious on how this like transfers to 4K. I don't know if it would well, but like the fact that they released it in 4K is just like with this quality, it's like, dude, what?
I'm gonna say it's like I could kind of understand with something like that, at least because the cameras at least are a little bit more high quality than most found footage films. Like even like okay, like you want to hear something like super counterintuitive that I saw once like forever ago?
Yes.
It was a newly remastered super HD transfer of 28 Days Later.
No.
And I'm just like,
no.
And I was just like, what's the point? It still looks like shit.
You're just all you're doing is just like putting that on like an upscaler and just being like, because the movie is made to look like shit.
Yeah, you're essentially deep frying the movie by making it higher quality like pixelation.
Yeah.
Which with this, I don't think that's as much of an issue because, like, again, it's like
Mhm.
again, I kind of have slight issue with it, but like I also understand why the fact that like the
Yeah.
camera does look a bit nicer than more found footage films. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I would I would probably love this a lot more if it actually had like the 28 days later style camera like shooting it.
Yeah.
But
I mainly bought it because I couldn't find the Blu-ray anywhere, and this was like brand new, and also it was a steelbook, and like the steelbook like and I like the way the steelbook looked. And I mainly, but it's like it still has the Blu-ray in it, so it's like, yay! If I don't 4K 6, at least still have it. But I just mainly just bought because like I can't fucking find this movie anywhere.
steelbooks are really nice. I I
Yeah,
I like honestly like there's no I don't even think there's really like a big selling point for like getting steelbooks that don't have any additional stuff besides being like I like touching it with my hands. It feels smooth.
yeah,
It activates my smooth neurons.
yeah, yeah. I think one thing that I just want to say, like sending off Cloverfield, before we do anything else, is more the fact that Cloverfield did get a sequel, or quote unquote sequel, with
Yeah.
10 Cloverfield Lane, in my opinion, one of the best movies of the 2010s.
Mm.
I think that movie is a near perfect tension movie. John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Gallagher Jr. giving amazing, incredible performances, incredibly tense, even with knowing that it is a kaiju, and like with the connection to Cloverfield, it still doesn't ruin the tension for me when it's revealed at the end that what's happening is actually real.
Mm.
And I think that movie is fucking incredible. And then we have Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah. A movie that was announced by via Super Bowl ad the night before it was released.
To exclusive to Netflix.
Exclusive to Netflix.
And oh boy, did I watch it and have never thought about it since.
Yeah. I remember I liked it when I first watched it, but also I was an idiot, stupid, dumbass teenager. So,
Yeah.
take that with not like a grain of salt. It's like a fucking boulder sized grain of salt.
Yeah. Sisyphus is salt.
Saltificis.
Yeah. Yeah, like also just we brought it up earlier. I feel like it's just kind of a crime not to mention it. The final scene in Cloverfield, the final shot in Cloverfield, where they were with like the tape, and then not even drawing attention to it, you can see like something crashing in the distance.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So fucking awesome.
That is a very good scene. It is kind of funny to me though, because it's like, oh man, this is another found footage horror movie with a confessional like sequence to end it off almost. But like no, like that is a really good scene because it's kind of like the dread just kind of fully seeps in at this point, and then like when it's followed up by the footage from the time the two characters were on the Ferris wheel is like, oh man, that's an effective moment.
Yeah, and then just like the final line of the movie is just like, oh my god, it really is just like, fuck,
Yeah.
dude, like what could have been,
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like an interesting film in terms of like an almost like having to accept the fact that the world has kind of shaped into something that you can't really like comprehend anymore because like again you have a movie where like literally the world is crumbling down around these characters and then ends with like a shot of them just like living their normal lives. I'm just like, oh fuck. It's like
Yeah.
because like that's probably how it felt for like a lot of people like post 9/11, and like us silly little baby children will be like, but we didn't really we did either live through it but don't really remember it or didn't live through it, but we lived through COVID, so like that's probably the closest like analog we have for
Yeah.
that. So it's like, yeah, real talk. Also, with that, with actually me mentioning that, I was gonna say 10 Cloverfield Lane is also a very good movie because it almost feels like a movie that like accidentally was ahead of its time in terms of like three
Yes.
people stuck in a place while the world is like crumbling outside.
And there's potentially a disease like out there, or there's a
Yeah.
disease out there that's
Like
like
no one really knows how to deal with it. No one knows for sure what's going on. And then there's like also people like, no, it's not even real.
yeah.
But
God, very fucking good movie.
yeah. I'm
Um,
sad that the Cloverfield franchise kind of folded into itself by doing a not particularly good sequel that connected to the first film instead of just staying as an anthology sort of deal. But
yeah.
such
But
is
hey,
the IP life.
yeah, but hey, we got 10 Cloverfield Lane out of it, so I'm not gonna complain too much.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, you have any final thoughts then on the movie you'd like to bring up before we round this thing off?
Not particularly on the movie, but with the fact that I was a Cloverfield hater and now have come back to it. Just as a note to the audience, sometimes it's not bad to revisit stuff. Sometimes you may change. Sometimes you may change your mind, like with my case in Cloverfield, or sometimes you may revisit it and then turn it off 15 minutes in, like when I revisited Mother the other day.
Yeah. Rewatching
Um,
stuff is valuable because looking
yeah.
at it from this perspective of knowing what it is rather than like what it could be is great. Because my example, I at one point in time I gave Speed Racer a 1-star rating, and now it is a 4-star film for me. So
Nice. And then
adaptation
yeah,
is possible.
another one being Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I watched it 4 times, hated it every single time, and then watched it again and I gave it a 9.
I'm probably gonna be like the most basic bitch in the world by saying this, but like I hated Interstellar when I first saw it, but now it's like might be my personal favorite Christopher Nolan film. You
I
could
haven't seen it, but I recently bought the 4K of it because I found it for really cheap, and so I'm interested in watching it.
That's a great film to have on 4K. That film is
Yeah.
beautiful. But yeah, no, it's always good to rewatch stuff. Even when in my case I rewatch it and my opinion is sort of more or less the same but just slightly improved because you know what? It's always good to enjoy a film a little bit more than what you
Yeah.
did originally. But
Yeah,
anywho,
exactly.
with that, now we get to what everyone's really here for.
Oh
That's
yeah.
right. It's time to rank the kaiju.
Rate that kaiju!
Yes.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da,
Who's that
ba-da-ba-da.
Pokemon? Now, the Cloverfield monster is interesting because in a lot of ways it's a kind of derivative of a lot of kaiju stuff, but in a lot of ways it's still kind of fresh in its own sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to give it like a specific ranking because I think it is a good kaiju, but I'm also
Mm-hmm.
like, to be honest, like the kaiju itself isn't really the big point of the film itself. It's more so like what the kaiju does to the people and everyone around it. But again,
Yeah.
we here at Mecha and Monster Mondays are always here for talking about the deep philosophical and political themes of a story, and then going like big monster though.
Big monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think because personally, you don't have to agree with me, because of the way that the monster is to the story, even with it having some like ideas that feel very familiar, but some ideas that do feel kind of fresh. I think I personally, if we're going by like tier list ranking, I'd put it in a solid B.
What would you give it out of 10 though?
Out of 10, I would. Are we including like point five ratings or just like solid?
It can be 0.5, whatever your heart desires.
I think I would say as a kaiju, a solid 7 out of 10. It's not the greatest kaiju of all time, but in terms of what it is and how it impacts the story, and what it and just it is, it's pretty good. Also bonus points for Phil Tippett being involved.
True, true. That is a very, very valid point. I was kind of on like the 7 or 8 range, and I think
Mhm.
remembering that it's like, but I gotta give it an 8 because like it is Phil Tippett though.
Yeah. Let's call it a 7.5 just to make it average out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
7.5, kind of giving it that perfect like solid kaiju ranking.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
with that said, that concludes our Cloverfield episode. Thank you, Luci, so much for joining me for this episode.
Thank you for having me. There are a lot of different ideas in my head for this, and then I think just on a whim, I was just like, you know what? I want to watch Cloverfield again, and like, would that count as a kaiju?
No, here's the thing. Here's the thing. As if you continue to follow this podcast, you will come to realize that if you can make an argument for it, you will most likely make it an episode, because there's going to be a future episode. There's going to be a future episode that everyone's going to be like, wait, why did you do that one? And the only reason is because one of my co-guests was like, hey, this is a kaiju film, right? And I was like, yeah, it is.
I guess.
Fuck it, let's do an episode on it. You'll know it when you see it.
I'm very excited for that episode.
But once again, thank you so much for joining me on this episode.
Yeah.
And
problem.
For everyone listening, I hope you all have a wonderful Mecha and Monster Monday. Peace.
Peace out.
It's a kid. There's some kid in the cockpit of the Gundam, sir.